There you are.
And, yeah, City, I wouldn't say hanging on in the end, but certainly were under pressure. And Mitomo, just before the Ansu Fati goal, missed an absolute sitter on a one-on-one with Ortega.
Yes.
Just fluffed his line, so... Yeah, disappointing from Brighton in terms of the first half.
Why aren't City putting these games to bed, as we've seen them do so many times previously?
Yeah.
I feel like they just keep the door ajar just for opponents, and it's not only Brighton, we've seen it a number of times this season, to give them a sniff to get them back into games.
Yeah, I don't really know the full answer to that at the moment, really. They're just not, you know, fully up to speed for some reason. They haven't hit their straps, and Brighton tried to play, and we knew they would. They just got outplayed by a better team that tries to do a similar thing. And then some changes came along, and Brighton in the second half just got so much more confidence, and City couldn't get the ball off them for long periods. I mentioned the Mitoma chance, there was some others, and Pep Guardiola was getting agitated on the side, but yeah, you know, Rodri back in the side, Stones was everywhere, you know, they had Silva. Doku was a huge threat, particularly in the first half. I mean, James Milner got taken off at half-time. You know, he's 30, whatever he is, 36, 37. 2, he's not a right back, although he's played there. And 3, he got no help from anybody.
No.
And you've got a 21-year-old who's lightning quick and who wants to run with the ball. And so that was a really difficult period for them. But yeah, we talked about it. Brighton losing too many goals, particularly early on in games. And City, you know, just not quite at the best, but doing enough.
Yeah, doing enough, Dom, but why aren't they be able to take it to the next level as they have done so many times over the years?
Yeah, I don't think this is a knock. Well, it's definitely not a knock from my part on Julian Alvarez, but he's a number 9 and Erling Haaland's a number 9, but even though he plays a little bit deeper, essentially, Alvarez is still a number 9. So I think the knock-on effect is when you're watching Erling Haaland, he's actually quite invisible. It's quite anonymous sometimes, even though he scored today. He's not looking like he's going to score 3 or 4 or 5 like he was last season. So when De Bruyne's in that position, I think you'll see City score a lot more goals. So that's probably why they've not been prolific. They're not battering teams 4s and 5s. They beat Fulham 5-1 about 2 months ago, but that was a strange old game. There was a goal in there that should never have been allowed. But I think that's my analysis. The reason why they're not putting teams to bed. They're still comfortable. I would agree with Craig when he said, or disagree with Craig slightly when he said they weren't hanging on and it wasn't anxious. It was actually, because De Zerbi problem solved at half-time. He went more aggressive. As Craig said, he made changes. Ansu Fati come on, and then Ferguson come on, Veltman come on. And he was really frustrated, De Zerbi, in the first half, because it was unlike a De Zerbi side that respected Man City too much. At the end of the game, Brighton gave them a really, really good game, and City were hanging on. So Guardiola will be thankful of all 3 points.
Kieran, we of course saw Doku start again ahead of Jack Grealish. As a fullback, who would you prefer to be up against? Like the pace of Doku or the skills of Grealish?
I'd have to go with the skills of Grealish. Doku just looks so dangerous right now. He's the worst type of player for me to have played against when I was playing, and he can go left, right. He's always on the move, and yeah, he's unpredictable. I think a lot of the time he doesn't even know what he's going to do, and they're even worse, them type of players. Because they're just so unpredictable. You can't keep up with them. But he's in fine form at the moment, and to be honest, Jack might have to be a little bit careful with you know how good he has been right now. Because I think for me, the reason why City haven't been as good is because, well, they missed Gundogan and obviously De Bruyne. I think that they keep the speed of Man City. They kept the speed of Man City last season. The last few seasons, they were insane, and Mahrez as well. But I think with Doku, he's given Man City a little bit of injection when they've needed it so far this season. And yeah, I'm a big fan, big fan.
You know, Doku to me is a real threat. But looking at him, he looks to me like a guy that I'd want to rattle. Because he's only a young man, but Milner gave him we call it an old-fashioned challenge,
yes,
and it was fair. And then he got a knock in the second half, and he rolled about for about 5 minutes and then picked himself up, and before you know it, he was doing 100 metres again in 10 seconds. And so I think, and he's a big, strong boy, but he's going to have to get used to the physicality, and that's what's going to happen to him. And he looks a little bit like that. He wants to go to ground when he gets these challenges, but it is competition, no doubt, for Grealish. They're different type of players. You mentioned that Doku's still pretty raw at times as well, but it's just a great option when you look at some of the money that Man United in particular across the city have wasted, and you look at what they paid for Doku, what they paid for Akanji, what they paid for one or two others. It's adding up to Anthony and a bit of change, you know what I mean? So they've spent, people will say, well, City, yeah, they spend big money. Well, they have at times, and some of their players, but other players they haven't. They've gone out and they've signed well to cover positions in the team for not 120 million, and it's worked out pretty well for them. Let me just correct Don. I didn't say City were not anxious at the end. I says Guardiola was anxious.
Oh, right, good.
And I don't believe City were hanging on because there was only one chance for Matoma, and not another chance I can remember.
Okay, I'm glad we clear that. Kanji, red card means he missed the Manchester derby. Don, big deal?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, you're going to miss him because he's versatile and he can play in a back three. He can play as a centre-back or left-back. But, John Stones come back today, Rolls-Royce of a player. Diaz come off the bench as well. So I think in the grand scheme of things, he wouldn't want to see his players showing ill discipline. But, playing against Man United, I wouldn't have thought he'd be too much of a miss in the position that he plays, as I said, because of Ruben Diaz and John Stones.